called the cops on my traumatized mother after she threw a knife, threatened my life, and secretly tracked me with an Airtag. My mother, 55, has been through a lifetime of intense trauma, mostly at the hands of men, her own father, and my dad. Both were cruel and abusive in ways I wouldn't wish on anyone, and because of her chaotic childhood, complete with a family tree of criminals, child molesters, just truly unwell people, she cut them all off. There's been no family around, ever. My dad was no better. So, for all of my 21 years, it's been her and me against the world. Growing up this way left me a homebody, nervy, shy, but lately I've started to break free from that. I'm proud to say I've got a fantastic job, plans to return to college next year, and, most surprisingly, I've found a solid friend group. It started with Catherine, my friend from high school, and blossomed from there to include her buddies, Aaron and Mick. Since Catherine's 21st birthday, the four of us have become basically inseparable. For the first time in my life, I'm actually going out and making memories, and it was my mom who always pushed me to be more social in the first place. Lately, I see them every weekend or so, and I can feel myself turning into a cool young woman, as cringy as that may sound. Here's the other thing, I'm developing real feelings for Mick, and it's crystal clear he feels the same. But even as I navigate all these new experiences, the shadow of my mom's trauma hovers over everything. She can't help but make sly jabs at Mick, his weight, his looks, how he's unfortunate to like me since I'm so out of his league. She sighs dramatically whenever I work 3 days a week and then hang out with my friends Saturday, like somehow I'm shortchanging her, though I spend the rest of my free time, Sunday through Tuesday, with her. A few weeks back it all came to a head. Mick picked me up so we could go on a picnic together. Honestly, it was our unofficial first date, but I didn't tell Mom that. Given how she spoke about him, it would have been a disaster. Mick, being the gentleman, promised her he'd drive safely and take care of me. But as excited and nervous as I was, when we reached the picnic spot, I completely forgot to text my mom that we'd arrived safely. I usually text her all the time, she's always hovered, thanks to her anxiety and trauma, and, in fact, she has Life 360 installed so she can always check my location. 2 hours later, still swept away in the moment, I realized my mistake and texted, "We had a great picnic, Mom, going to Mick's house now and then we'll grab some lunch. I love you U20. As soon as she replied, my stomach plummeted. I'm used to her mood snapping from sweet to scary in an instant. Her volatility is a consequence of her past, and I always feel like I'm responsible for her emotional weather. The message she sent me was syrupy on the surface but cinched tight with anger underneath. "Sorry sweetheart, I didn't feel the need to rush a reply the same as you I guess. I'm glad you're having a great time, you deserve it, but please don't forget I exist because that's how you made me feel after not being able to reply or let me know you got there safe. My Life 360 was strangely disabled, first time ever, not now. You are very different when with other people and forget those who do everything for you. I won't be texting and you don't need to text me unless it's urgent and I'm fine." I cried in front of Mick, anxiety tangled up in guilt. I was quick to apologize. After all, this was the first and only time I'd forgotten to text her. She acted like she was fine after, but I kept updating her all weekend, even though I wanted to be present with my friends. I thought it was enough. At work, I can't always respond to her huge, question-laden texts right away, but I try to do my best even when I'm out with friends. After Mick dropped me back home, the trouble began. As soon as he left, she launched into a screaming tirade about how I use and abuse her, how I forget about her, how I've shown my true colors, and accused me of using my friends as an excuse not to text her. Deep down, I know all this is coming from fear, but she cut with her words and it hurt. I hate yelling, I hate the way she can turn violent. Eventually, things calmed down, but the tension stayed thick. A week later, I came home from work. She was at the counter, chopping onions for dinner. I told her about my day and casually mentioned that Mick and the group were driving 40 minutes to a burger place. That's when she snapped. Completely lost it. She hurled the knife at the wall and tore me apart, threatened to hit me, raised her arm, called me fat and flabby, insulted my body and threatened my livelihood, screamed for me to move out and fuck off. All her rage, all her pain about her life, came pouring out. Doctors who dismiss her chronic pain, neighbors she's convinced are out to get her, everyone betraying her. And now me, too. I was terrified. My body responded automatically, fight or flight. I tried to escape to my room but she stormed after me, threatened me again, then kept coming in every few hours to scream and hurl insults, even throwing a dress at me at one point. I spent the night curled up, clutching my phone, texting Mick in desperation. I was too scared to move, too scared to go to the bathroom. It's impossible to describe how truly afraid I was. By morning, she was still passive-aggressive, but she wanted me to snuggle in bed with her while she napped. She talked about us discussing things later but her tone was sharp, icy, and I just lay there next to her, body stiff, absolutely frozen and scared to do anything. I feel for her. The doctors really have stripped away all compassion for her pain, left her isolated all week while I'm at work, and she's convinced even our neighbors are tormenting her. She depends on me to get out of the house, and lately, me having fun with my friends has been the last straw. I lay there, quietly texting Mick, only staying by her side because I'm petrified, not because I want to. Eventually Mick convinced me to come stay with him overnight, just to get a break, and I knew I needed it. So, at 10 a.m., while she's asleep, I shakily pack my bag and steel myself. I gently tell her I need a night away at Mick's because of everything that happened. She bursts into sobs. I explain it's just for a day, so we can breathe, but she escalates again, shouting over me and refusing to let me speak. I stumble out to Mick's car, break down in his arms, and hear her words echoing behind me. I thought we were going to talk this out today and everything would be okay. I can't help but replay the question in my head. Did I make a mistake leaving her after she'd obviously had a breakdown? Should I have walked out as she was screaming, as much as my overloaded nerves were begging to escape, or did I mess up in waiting until the next day, when things were cooler, even though my body still buzzed with stress? The whole thing is still raw in my mind. We were driving to Mick's place when my phone chimed with a message from Mum. She wrote that she loved me, but that she was going to take my life, and made it clear, with that twisty, guilt-laden logic, that it was all my fault. My chest immediately tightened, I could hardly breathe. I started spiraling into a full-on panic attack right there in the car. Mick, always the calm anchor, told me to call for a welfare check. Desperate, choking on tears, I did. On the phone, I had to find words to explain why I thought Mum might mean it, why I was so scared. I fumbled through the story, the knife she'd thrown, her raising fists at me, threatening to kick me out, to leave me to fend for myself even though I'm her part-time carer, and all the dark, venomous things she'd screamed at me. That call brought the cops, too. I panicked again. Had I just started a domestic violence investigation against my own mother? I tried to pour everything out to the officer, how much I love her, how she's so scared of being alone, and how I think she sees my growing independence, even my slow replies to her texts, as proof I'm abandoning her. It was like trying to explain a storm using only the word rain. They ended up taking her to the hospital. I found out later that she was treated like some kind of emergency risk, grabbed by staff, kept under harsh watch. I was sick with guilt, picturing her afraid and alone. When she finally got her phone back, her text hit like a sledgehammer. Whatever hold you put on me didn't work, how dare you? You are fucking dead to me. Don't come back to my home, and on in that cruel, scalding way she reserves just for me. I sobbed until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. She blocked me. For days, I hung in this limbo of fear and grief, half convinced I'd ruined everything. Through it all, Mick was the one keeping me afloat, and when I calmed down enough to breathe again, I used Mick's phone to call her. She sobbed the moment she heard my voice, pouring out apologies. She told me she missed me and wanted me back, and I broke down alongside her. Somehow, we reconciled. But now, everything feels poisoned. She can barely tolerate it when I go out with friends. After she invited Mick over to have ice cream and crash at our place, she turned on me the moment he left, accusing me of letting a fat man ruin our routine and upending our lives. Her words only got nastier. She called him a grub, said he had a smell about him, accused him of being a walking heart attack and overweight and disgusting. She told me, he's 20, you're 21, he's too immature for you. Don't you dare think about getting romantic with him. She said I was out of his league, warned me not to bring him around my friends or coworkers or I'd be embarrassed and lose work hours. She ranted about the suburb he works in, as a youth worker, no less, listing the kids he helps as if that somehow made him dirty. If he takes you there, I'll kill him. If you kiss him, you'll catch anything. I'd be disgusted, she spat. She tore into his haircuts, accused him of being unhygienic because he forgot to flush after peeing, and, in the most cutting voice, said, you need a challenge and he is clearly developmentally delayed. He might be good with kids but he'd bore you, you'd never get my blessing. He's fat and if you regain your 40 kilograms because of him, I'd be fucking disgusted. At one point, as she was ranting, she grazed my leg with her hand and hissed, don't you dare call the cops again and go crying abuse. I haven't told you yet, but they told me you told them about me skimming the knife along the ground. I haven't gotten up you for that one yet either. Now, every day feels like walking on broken glass. I feel like I've destroyed our relationship by trying to protect her, by doing literally the only thing I could think of when she threatened her own life. I'm being punished for wanting normal things like seeing my friends or getting help. She's furious that I called for that welfare check, and every word feels like a fresh cut. We have no other family, no support. I was terrified of losing my mum, terrified for her, terrified of her. And I still don't know what else I could have possibly done. Update, I was at the self-checkout grabbing milk and cereal before heading to Mick's, and my bag made this tiny, high-pitched sound that didn't belong to anything, like a digital bird. I froze. I pulled everything out with my heart halfway up my throat, lip balm, keys, my little pill case, charger, purse. There it was, wedged into the seam of the lining like a pearl someone had glued in, an Airtag. I turned it in my fingers and felt my whole body go cold and hot at the same time. I didn't say anything for a second because saying it would make it real, but then I heard my own voice, flat and not mine, ask a complete stranger if they happen to know how to disable an Airtag. I drove home with my jaw clenched and every streetlight felt like an interrogation. When I walked in, Mum was sitting in the lounge in her robe like the queen of everything was waiting for her court to convene. I held the Airtag up between two fingers and asked, as gently as I could manage, why it was inside my bag. She didn't even blink. "I bought it ages ago," she said, in that sing-song voice she uses when she's pretending she's comforting me, "only to keep you safe because you kept switching Life 360 off. I can't sleep unless I know my baby is okay." It took everything in me not to laugh, because the first and only time Life 360 switched off, she'd accused me of doing it on purpose. I told her I didn't want to be tracked like a runaway dog. The smile dropped. She said I was dramatic, ungrateful, that she'd saved my life with that ugly little button. I put it on the coffee table and stepped back like it was a snake and told her not to put anything in my things again. It should have ended there. Of course it didn't. The next morning she came to my work. It was 10:30 a.m., we were short 2 people and the phones were going mad, and suddenly I heard my name said in the tone teachers use when you're about to get detention. She was standing at the front in her slippers, hair unbrushed, holding a plastic folder of papers like she was about to lodge a complaint with my manager about me existing. My feet went to jelly. She said, loudly enough for the waiting room to go quiet, that she needed to speak to me about what you did with the police and the men you're with. She waved a handful of printouts that were just screenshots of my Life 360 timeline with circles around times I'd been at Mix. I could feel everyone's eyes like pins. My manager gently ushered her aside and asked if she was well. Mum swung the folder into her own chest and started wailing about her heart and her pain and that I'd abandoned her and how could a daughter do this. I could not get breath into my lungs. I apologized to my manager with my mouth while texting Mick with my fingers to please come now. Security asked her to leave. She made sure every single person heard her tell me I was dead to her again. I went into the bathroom, sat on the toilet lid fully clothed and shook so hard the metal bin rattled. I called our GP from the cubicle and told the receptionist, in that bright polite voice I used to make people comfortable, that I needed an appointment for myself today, anytime, that it was urgent. I spent my lunch break telling a doctor about my own mother throwing a knife and slipping a tracker into my bag. I told him she threatened to kill my boyfriend if he took me to his work suburb. He didn't look shocked. He gave me a sick note with crisp edges even though I said I could work, and he asked me if I had somewhere safe to sleep. The way the room went soft around me when he said safe will stick with me forever. I texted Catherine and she rang me straight away and said yes before I even finished the sentence. Telling Mum I was going to stay at Catherine's that night was like tossing a match into a shed full of turpentine. She blocked the hallway like a bouncer and told me if I walked past her she'd call the cops and say I'd stolen from her. My suitcase was open on my bed, half full of clothes and 3 pairs of socks I suddenly hated because they were pink and had flamingos on them, too cheerful for any of this. I told her I was taking my documents and a few things and I'd be back for the rest. She laughed in my face. "What documents?" she said. I felt my stomach tip over itself. I tore my room apart, then the kitchen drawers, then under the couch. Birth certificate, gone. Passport, gone. She followed me, yawning, saying she didn't know, maybe I had misplaced them. Mick and Aaron pulled up out front like a rescue team. The engine cut out and the silence was enormous. When they knocked, she opened the door and told them to get off her property, filthy pigs, and actually spat. I told her I was going to the police station, and her eyes glittered. "Go on then," she said. "Tell them you're kidnapping yourself." I walked past her with my bag on my shoulder because if I stayed one more second I was going to make a sound that would never end. At the station, I tried again to fold a thunderstorm into a whisper. The officer behind the glass asked me if there were weapons in the house and I told her about the knife, about the raised fist, the text about taking her life and killing my boyfriend and all the words that sit under my skin like shards. She asked me if I wanted to apply for a protective order. I looked at her face and thought of Mum sitting in bed in her robe, soft and small like a little girl, and then I pictured that knife ricocheting off the wall and the nick still there in the paint, and I said yes, in that voice that you use at checkout when you decide to buy something you can't really afford. They gave me a stack of paper that felt heavier than a brick and a little card with a case number as if that could build a bridge between the life I had and the one I needed. I went back with the police to collect my documents and a few things. When she saw the female officer, Mum went slack and syrupy, like she'd been waiting to play nice. She said she didn't know where my documents were. She told them I was mixed up with bad people and that I had mental health problems. She tried to cry. The officer asked to look in the bedroom. The passport was in Mum's underwear drawer. My birth certificate was in the oven. The photo albums were stacked by the back door like kindling. I looked at the knife mark on the wall and pressed my thumb into it, and if I'd had a pen I would have circled it. She didn't throw things. She didn't hit me. She didn't have to. The words followed me out like dogs. She leaned in very close at the doorway and whispered, almost lovingly, that if I kissed him, if I brought him around those filthy kids he worked with, she would make sure he regretted his life. The officer put her hand between Mum and my shoulder like placing a saucer under a candle and told me to step away. Catherine's spare room smelled like laundry detergent and eucalyptus oil and a life I might one day get to have. I lay on the mattress and listened to the hum of their ancient fridge and the train rattling past 3 blocks away, and for the first time in ages I didn't jump at the sound of a door swelling in its frame. I slept in my jeans. I woke up to 43 missed calls from unknown numbers and a video message from a no-caller ID of our front door camera with my face circled in red and the word thief typed over the top in bright capitals. The text that followed was from a new number. It was Mum. "I hope the cops told you I'm fine. I made friends on the ward. They told me all about daughters like you. That afternoon my manager called me into her office and there was that sick bucket feeling again. Mom had emailed HR. She wrote that I was neglectful, abusive, that I was stealing from her pension, that I drank on the job, I don't even drink on weekends, I'm that boring, that I invited criminals in to meet clients. HR had to investigate because that's what HR does. I sat at the tiny table and showed them the police card and the sick note and I watched my own hands on the desk and marveled at how steady they were. My manager said she was sorry. I told her it wasn't her fault and then I went to the bathroom and cried until my mouth hurt from how hard I'd clamped it shut. There was one bright thing. It feels almost wrong to write it down amongst the sludge but it's real so I will. We were sitting on Catherine's couch watching some dumb cooking competition where they made desserts that looked like other food and Mick was talking about a kid at his work who'd finally agreed to see a GP about his anxiety. He was smiling at the telly like it had done something generous. He looked over at me and said, so simply, can I hold your hand? Like he was asking the weather for permission. I put my palm in his and the shape it made on my skin felt like somebody had drawn a future there. We kissed in the kitchen, later, in that awkward soft way where your noses bump and you laugh into each other's mouths, and it didn't feel like rebellion, it felt like breathing. Mum tried to come to Catherine's 2 nights after. She stood on the footpath with a Woolies bag and yelled up at the flat that she had my medication and that if we didn't let her in she'd call the fire brigade because she could smell gas. Catherine's downstairs neighbor cracked his window and told her to go home. She turned her face up to me and did the little girl voice again. I couldn't, so I didn't. Mick called the non-emergency number and a patrol came by and asked her to leave. After they were gone she left the bag at the door and texted me 3 photos of the pills, lined up on her palm like beads, with the caption "Look what I have." I called the crisis line and gave them our address and hers and then I lay on the floor and watched the ceiling fan go around and around and I thought this is grief, this is grief, this is grief. This morning, I went back to the house with Catherine and a locksmith. I didn't tell Mom. I stood on the path and looked at the windows, at the curtain she'd stitched herself in a quiet mood, at the pot of dead mint she kept insisting she'd revive, and I knocked. Nothing. The locksmith did his work with the same calm you use to spread butter. We were in and out in 20 minutes. I took my plants, my guitar I never learned to play, my year 10 art book with the bent spine, the brown blanket I've had since I was 5. I left a note on the kitchen table that said I loved her, that I would come by with an officer to get anything else because I wanted us both safe, that I wasn't abandoning her, I was choosing to survive. I put the Airtag in the note, right in the fold, so that when she opened it it would fall into her hand like an apology I couldn't give. I don't know what happens next. She's already messaged from another number saying she's put my name on the letterbox in permanent marker as a warning and that the neighbors have chosen sides. She told me she went to our GP and he laughed in her face, he didn't, and that she was buying cameras for every room. I had to change my number today. I held my phone in the phone shop like a person might hold a newborn and when the man asked me if I wanted to keep my voice mailbox greeting I almost said yes because it felt like losing a tiny bit more of myself. I said no. I still check the nick in my wall in my head. I still wake up at 3 a.m. and reach for my phone to make sure the little circle on Life 360 hasn't moved even though I deleted it 2 days ago. I still hear her in my ear telling me I'm rotten and I still hear her as my mother when she was soft and tired and told me I was clever and strong. I'm both the girl who's braced for the door to slam and the woman who now sleeps in a room that smells like detergent and eucalyptus oil with someone's hand warm around hers. Update: the day of court was the color of old paper. The magistrate's court waiting room smelled like lemon cleaner and nerves. There were posters about respect pinned at militant angles and a TV with captions on, doing a news report about a dog show while everyone in the room pretended they weren't reading each other. A woman from the domestic violence unit with a cardigan soft as a cloud gave me a plastic cup of water and said my name in that way that makes you feel like you're not about to come apart. I had a folder with me that Catherine helped me put together, screenshots, the photo of the nick in the wall, printouts of the text with the words that made my mouth taste metallic. The pages felt heavier than paper should, like wet clothes. Mum walked in with a scarf and a face like a saint in a painting. She clocked me and did the tiny, pitying shake of her head like she was blessing herself. She had a folder too, bulging, the same kind she'd brought to my work, our lives flattened and hole-punched. When they called our names my legs were hollow. The magistrate was a small woman with a tight bun and the kind of presence that makes a room sit up straighter. Mum started with the syrup. The words dripped, my baby, so worried, poor health, and then she veered like a car pulling into oncoming traffic and told the court I was unstable and running around with criminals, that I'd weaponized the police against her because I'd been caught out. Her voice went higher with each accusation until it was almost a whistle. The magistrate's pen ticked like a metronome. When she asked me to speak, my tongue found words that had been living behind my teeth for weeks. I said knife. I said Airtag. I said oven. I said he'll regret his life and it echoed on the wooden benches. I passed up the screenshots with my hands shaking and the DV worker's cardigan sleeve brushing my knuckles was the most human thing I have ever felt. Mum tried to laugh at the Airtag like it was a joke we'd all somehow agreed to, and then she did the thing where she gets smaller in the chair and cries without tears. The magistrate didn't look at her, only at the papers, and then at me. She granted the order for 12 months, full no contact, no coming onto my street, no coming to my work, no third-party messages. When the words were said, the air in my lungs changed shape. Mum made a sound like someone had stepped on her foot. As we left, she called after me in the corridor without looking at me, "See you soon, sweet girl," like the order was a suggestion. 2 days later my phone made a noise at 3 in the morning. A sound that went straight into my bones. An unknown Airtag is moving with you. My skin tried to leave my body. I pulled on jeans and without turning on the light I went through my bag, my shoes, the hem of my jacket, the lining of the suitcase I hadn't unpacked because it felt like admitting I lived somewhere else now. Nothing. Catherine sat up in bed, hair everywhere, eyes glassy, and said, "Car." We went down in our socks into the cold. The street was a film set, one streetlight flickering, a cat I'd seen before under a Ford, a bottle cap glittering like an evil coin. Mick arrived like he had teleported and slid under my car without a word. He came back out with black on his cheek and tape stuck to his palm. The Airtag had been taped into the cavity behind my number plate, snug as a tick. He held it like a spider he didn't want to kill, and we all looked at it for a second until I realized I was holding my breath. In the morning I walked into the station with it in a sandwich bag. The constable on the front desk took one look at the bag and then at me, and her mouth went a hard line I will remember forever. "That's a breach," she said, and she wrote it down. HR finished their investigation like a dentist finishing a root canal, calm, clinical, apologetic. My manager called me in, and the same little glass-walled office that had made me feel like I might throw up last week now felt almost kind. They told me they'd flagged my file so reception can make a silent call to security if Mum turned up again. They said her emails would go to spam and to the police liaison officer whose card is now taped to the back of my phone case like a talisman. I sat and breathed and looked at the calendar on the wall with the teacup dogs for August and found I could love a pug in a sweater with my whole stupid heart. On the way back to my desk, Denise from accounts, who wears little gold bee earrings and smells like talc, put a chocolate frog on my keyboard and didn't look at me while I discovered it. I bit off its head and cried anyway. There was a day that will sit in my chest like a warm stone. It had nothing in it that would impress anyone. I picked up a second-hand desk from Marketplace where the woman selling it had a baby on one hip and keys in her bra, and the desk had a gouge out of one leg like it had tried to take itself somewhere once and changed its mind. Catherine's downstairs neighbor helped carry it up even though he was wearing thongs and kept saying steady like he was narrating a ballet. I put it against the window and placed my Year 10 art book on it and a plant that looks like it is always praying. In the afternoon, Mick and I went to Bunnings for a lamp and came out with 6 paint cards and nowhere to put them. We ate chips on a seawall and watched a dog dig furiously in the sand as if there was a door underneath. He told me about a kid at his work who'd made it through a whole class without bolting, and I told him about the first time my name was called in court and it wasn't for jury duty. We said the word girlfriend once and then didn't speak for a full minute because it docked inside me like a ship, and I was in awe at how the tide went quiet. The breach charges moved fast in a way I didn't expect. The officer called and said the order had teeth. Mum had left the Airtag in the note, but the one on the car couldn't have been a coincidence. The texts from the new numbers kept coming until they didn't because my number changed, and then a letter came to the flat in handwriting. That wasn't hers, block capitals cut with impatience. It said my name, and when I turned it over with Catherine watching me it was empty. Just an envelope. It shook me more than a threat would have. A day later a woman in a polo shirt from the DV service at court called to say they had a safety plan for me that included something as boring as changing my route to work and something as fantastic as a locksmith voucher. I told her about the envelope and she told me to keep it. Evidence can look like nothing, she said. Work put a sign on the back door that said staff only, and I laughed in a way that might have been a sob. Mum tried the front. This time she didn't get as far as the carpet. Security walked her out while she did the limp body thing where she tries to make herself a puddle. She lay on the footpath and wailed about her heart and her only daughter and filmed herself doing it on her phone. Later she uploaded it somewhere because a girl I don't even like from high school sent me a screenshot at midnight with "Is this your mom?" and a row of wide eyes. The comments were exactly what comments are. I put my phone face down and stared at the little crack in Catherine's ceiling that looks like Tasmania, and then I picked the phone back up and blocked 3 more numbers and breathed. We went back to the house again with the police under the terms of the order, because I play by rules, even when the rules make me feel like paper. Mum had changed nothing. The mint in the pot was still dead like a tiny gray forest. The nick in the wall still took my thumb like a key. The officer, the same one with the saucer hand, stood in the kitchen with her notebook and her patience while I went through the drawers. I found a shoebox under the sink with things I didn't know were missing. The library card that still says I am 14, a letter addressed to P. O. Box, something in my father's spiky writing, unopened. I held it like it might bite me. I didn't open it there. The house made me feel like a fish on a cutting board. Mum kept up a soft running commentary to the officer about how I'd always been disorganized, always losing things, and at one point she smiled at me and said, "Do you see what you've done to me?" with the warmth a person might use to ask for tea. When we left, she went dead-eyed and mouthed, very carefully, "Tick, tock." The officer saw and wrote it down. I hate the way relief feels like betrayal. There was a morning I woke up and didn't immediately think about the door. The world tilted to a better angle. I could hear the train 3 blocks away and someone down the road laughing too loud and a seagull being a bastard. I lay and watched the rectangle of light on the wall slide down, and I didn't move because I didn't have to. In the afternoon I met with enrollments at the uni, and the woman at the desk handed me a pamphlet that had photos of smiling people under trees, and it made me want to put my face in a cushion and scream because it was that banal and that hopeful. I paid a bond on a room 2 streets over from Catherine's, where the walls are already painted the color I accidentally love, and the landlord is an old woman who breeds something that looks like a cat had a fight with a cloud. She watched me sign the lease like she was watching a ceremony. The night before I moved my things, Mum turned up at Mick's work. She waited outside the youth center until a parent arrived and then tried to push in with them, talking fast, telling anyone who would listen that he was corrupting me, that he was taking me to those filthy kids like they were a disease. His manager is a woman with arms like a swimmer and a voice like a bell. She came out and shut the door behind her with a click that probably felt like a slap to Mum. She reminded Mum of the order in the exact words printed on the paper. Mum told her she was doing God's work in the wrong place. The police came, and this time they didn't just warn her. They charged her for the breach. I got a call from the officer while I was standing in Kmart holding a laundry basket, and by the time she finished telling me what would happen next, I had filled it with 3 towels and a ridiculous cushion with a bird on it and had no memory of walking the aisles. Mum texted from another new number an hour later, "You've done this. I hope you're proud." I switched my phone off and sat on the floor between the mop buckets and rice cookers with my back against a stack of plastic tubs and counted my breaths like coins. If this were a film, there'd be a scene where she changes, or I do, and we meet in the middle under a streetlight somewhere and say the exact right words. Instead there was court again, quick as a fox this time, because once you're in, the path repeats. She wore the same scarf. The magistrate didn't. The breach stuck. Conditions stayed. I don't know what she did after. I went home and moved a pot plant from one end of the windowsill to the other, and it felt like moving a mountain. There were strange small kindnesses. The downstairs neighbor left a jar of bolts on the stair and a note that said, "For your desk." The woman at the post office told me my new P.O. box number twice so it would stick. My GP wrote "fit for work" in neat letters and then underlined "safe housing" with his pen and looked me in the eye like we were saying grace. A kid at Mick's work drew me a picture of a cat with a cape and wrote "for your new house." I blue tacked it above the notched desk and cried into my macas. Tonight I cooked pasta in a pan too small because I don't know yet what size my life is. Catherine sat on the bench and did commentary about the steam like it was a weather event. Mick came over with a bag of mandarins, and the way he placed them in the bowl made me want to live. We ate at the desk, and the gouge in the leg didn't bother me. It felt like proof that things can be used and still hold.